Or 6 o'clock and our fire department retreat.
Joseph Cox, Jacob Everett, Eric Hayden.
Present.
Dennis Johnson.
Present.
Emily Pearson. Present.
The floor is yours, Mr. Frazier.
Well, good evening, and I really wanted to thank you guys. I like this, the way you guys do this. You have an opportunity to come and talk to me about this. This is a nice change of pace for me to be able to sit down and present to you guys, so I enjoy it. And also want to let you guys know that I've really, only been here 2 months, but I've really enjoyed this town and all the people I've met. It's just been a really nice atmosphere, so. Sorry, let me move that over a little bit.
It is a little golden jewel.
It is. Oh, there you go.
It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, so you guys know what you have here, right?
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was just go through this. I've got a lot of stuff to add into it. If you guys have any questions, ask me along the way. This is our current mission statement. I just put it in there for you guys to see. Like I said, if you don't get the email, it's just following along directly with what's on there. And this is kind of like the idea of what we try to.
Feedback from someone.
I think it's me. I think I got it too much. There's that better?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good. Thank you.
All right, so this is just our mission statement of how we operate at the department, and this was prior to me. This is just a good thing to look at to know how we operate and why we do what we do. So, next page, 2025 operational overview. We made 769 calls for service last year. That's a combination of our automatic aid, which is a very much a value add to this community because we get a lot of service from other departments around, that they reach out and help us on these runs, that we are able to meet the numbers we need of fires with the help of Jackson Township and Noblesville and White River. So automatic aid is a big part of what we do here. Last year, EMS counted for 58% of our run volume. And one thing I can tell you from just my time watching this department, the EMS operations of this department are top notch. They have a very, very high-end understanding of medical care at the medic level, and they provide a high level of ALS, advanced life support. So you guys have a very, very good value in this community for what you have with that. Types of responses they had last year, we had fire, hazardous materials. We had,
Chief, real quick, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Do you know what percentage is automatic aid versus in-town?
no, I'm trying to pull that up. We're having trouble with our system because we had to switch reporting systems in the year, so we're having trouble generating reports off the new software. And everybody's having trouble with the new software. They went from a system called NIFRS, National Fire Incident Reporting System, to NERIS, which is National Emergency Response something. But changing over the new software that everybody's gone to, everybody's having trouble. Even CAT or the dispatch is having trouble generating the reports that we're looking for. So I can't break it down fully, like of how many were in and how many were out.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll try to get that. We're working on that. I've got some things in here that we're working on that we're going to try to get you better numbers on
Okay.
along the way.
Thank you.
So our type of runs are fire, hazardous materials, a lot of multi-agency operations, which goes into the automatic aid. We have our water emergencies, which are kind of come and go, less than I thought we would have, but they are out there. Lots of vehicle accidents and lots of falls. I feel like that's a lot of what we do, and I'm talking to Emily a little bit about, we're working on some programs at the library that we're going to do some fall prevention stuff for elderly people in the community, try to kind of help them and go through their community houses and things of what can we do to keep you from having falls. And a lot of it's just trip hazards and teaching them how to kind of set their house up in a safe manner. So a lot of that hopefully will help some of that going forward. All right, next page. So, biggest thing we've been talking about is ISO. So, good news, not firm yet, but we've got some good news from ISO. We've made some changes to our operations, so we are now operating everything in the town limits because we have fire hydrants. We're operating our ladder, which gives us dual points as a ladder and an engine, a Quint. So, as of the email I got a couple weeks ago, we're still waiting for verification that they actually make the thing happen, but they are saying we are probably going to be a class 4 again. So we've actually gone back to where we started. So the idea before was we were going to go, they were saying we could be a 10, we were going to go back to a 5, and now it looks like we're going to squeak back into a class 4 at 60.5 points, which 60 to 70 is that ranking for a class 4. So I don't have the official word yet, but I've got the word from the gentleman who's been helping us that it looks like they've been able to recalculate some stuff and get us to a class 4. So that should be official around the July time period when we hit that year mark. But we are still, if you look at the next page, which is just part of this, it's actually how they calculate, and that's our current numbers for ISO, and that just kind of breaks down how they do it. Our newest numbers are going to be very similar to what that page says. So when I get that new page in the official review, we'll get that information all out to you so you can see exactly what it is. Also, one of the things that really is going to help us in the future and helped us this time, we're going to work with DJ from the water company a lot on making sure we're testing our hydrants and we can get that information to them. The new improvements to the water systems are going to help us a lot because that really is going to increase pressures, especially to the west side of the reservoir. I know we have a lot of issues when the summertime where everybody's using water, watering yards, things like that, the water pressure drops a lot on that side. So that's one thing that we feel is going to help a lot once this is all completed. So those three things will really help us currently, but going forward in the future on our ISO reviews. Next page. Any questions about ISO? Going forward. Training. So training is another big part of ISO that we're dealing with, and we're really trying to dial in our training. There's a lot of points we lose just based on documentation. A lot of it's the nature of how we operate because it's very hard to get training hours for our part-time people, but they also count against us when we get evaluated. So last year we had 1,775 total hours in the department. We're working now to where everybody who's a part-time person who's affiliated with another department, we're going to require them to give us their full training for the year, which we can add into ours. And that helps us with our training because if a person, is fully trained and let's say they work for Noblesville, they get all their training there, but if we don't have record of it, it doesn't help us because it shows that person hasn't gotten any training. We still have to do some training internally with those people also, but when we can pull their training records in from their department they work full-time at, we can implement that into our training and add a lot of points into our future ISO reviews. This year, one of the things we've really kind of, over the last couple months, have kind of zeroed in on is we really need to work on officer development programs, and we need to work on EMS continuing education, which is getting a lot of our new people up to speed on the high level of how we operate on EMS because like the new people we brought in, it's a different world to them. They're learning at a very fast pace of how we do EMS here in Cicero. So that's been a lot of the training we've been doing, and then we're going to start really focusing a little bit on this specialized and technical training. We have a giant body of water in the middle, and we really haven't done a lot of water training necessarily, so we're really going to try to get that to where we can effect water rescues and we can do it safely for our people. So we've got a lot of training planned on that, and most of that we can do in-house. A lot of it I can do. We have other people that are coming in that can teach it, and so it's not something that's going to be a cost to us where we have to go out and find somebody to do it. We can do a lot of that internally. Community engagement and fire prevention. So fire inspections, this town is a good size, so there's about 120-ish businesses that we have to inspect over the course of a year, and it's very manageable, so we've got a good plan in place to make sure we're hitting all of our businesses every year, just doing basic fire inspections on it. There's not a lot of high risk in this community we really have to deal with, but we're going to kind of go through and just make sure there's a lot of things that we consider risk that a lot of people don't think of. There's a lot of these businesses down here that have basements that nobody realizes has a basement, or there might be a common basement from these buildings being old between several buildings in a row. So just identifying those things, and then we can put all that information into our notification alert system, so when it comes up we can actually click on it and it'll have a notes page and it'll actually tell us, hey, this building has a basement that's shared with 3 buildings, the entrance is on the east side of the building, things like that. So combining all of our inspections into that program will give us a lot more knowledge base when we're responding to buildings in town and businesses. What hazardous materials do they have? Tire businesses are notorious for storing tires in their basements or around their buildings, so it's just a large fire load that we want to be aware of and make sure that we know about. Try to do a lot of smoke alarm installations around town. Smoke detectors are our biggest life safety thing that we can do. If we can put a smoke detector in your house, that's going to do more than anything we can do to prevent a fire fatality. So we're going to try to really work on that to make sure we get out and make sure we have that in the community. And then do a lot of development and business outreach where we're explaining to people why we do what we do. Most rules that follow into our inspection and Indiana code or fire code all revolve from something bad to happen. something bad happened and they looked at me and said, hey, we probably shouldn't do this because somebody died in this building or something bad happened or things like that. So things as simple as like inward and outward swinging doors. They determine that, you know, a inward swinging door on a business where people are trying to get out is bad. You know, little things like that. So you start seeing little things like that. So we're going to really try to do some outreach and education with the local businesses on kind of why we do the things we do and what the expectations are.
So regarding fire inspections.
Yep.
With Steve retiring, and at least in the last year, there were multiple people taking over that role. Specific training they need to take, I'm sure you're all over it.
Yeah, so we're actually, a lot of it's software driven. So we just had a meeting Friday. So Scott Rickman, who's our newest chief that came in, he's gonna kind of head that up. And he handled that for me in Kokomo. That's kind of part of what he did. So he's gonna kind of oversee that, but we're doing a little bit of a combination of how we're gonna do inspections. So we're gonna start doing crew level inspections. So when we identify a building that maybe, you know, you say you walk into here and there's an exit sign and there's not a lot in here to inspect. Well, we can send a crew over here. We have like multiple people that are licensed to be inspectors. The crew levels can come over and do these type of inspections. We're gonna identify which ones are more high hazard, which ones have more things we need to inspect, and that will be done more by, so Andrew Pasquale and Scott Rickman are gonna kind of team up, and they're taking that over there on the same shift. So their shift is gonna kind of run everything inspections, whether that's preparing for the 4th of July or the Haunted Trail or anything like that. They're gonna take over that role and run all that.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Budget, I'm really going through this budget. I'm trying to figure out kind of the things and where everything is and what makes sense how to do it. So it's so early on, you know, I've only got a couple months into this. So a couple of things we were looking at is I've talked to Jim a little bit about, we're gonna really start reaching out, researching on our own what grants are available and get them to the person we are using for grants, try to identify grants that we could actually use and are valuable to us, and go forward from that.
Are you using the grant writer at all?
Am I?
Just curious.
Not yet. I've got one sent to me, but it was a wildfire grant that really didn't apply to us. We didn't have, it was for out west, that kind of thing, you know. We could say we have wildfires here with the crops, but I mean, it's a different type of animal of what they were. The things they could do for us, and that grant didn't really apply to us. So yeah, but she's already found something and sent it to us, so. And Jim, I talked to Jim about working to get us, we can identify them from our side too. The hardest thing is writing it. It's not finding it, it's just writing it. So having a person to write the grant, if we can identify it and send it to her, that'll be helpful to us. Kind of, oh yeah? Noted.
Amy is looking at some other potential grants for the fire department also, so she's put together, I think, a list that she'll
Okay.
share.
Yeah, Jim told me that she was gonna work on that a little bit. Kind of going through our capital investments, like what kind of things are coming up in the future. I've kind of gone through the list, and the list kind of stays the same. There's nothing really changing. Most of it's gonna be based on growth of the area. If there's growth, where do we need to start looking at, you know, where do we lack resources, where do we lack response, where do we do things like that. So a lot of it's just going forward for that. Like I said, I haven't gotten deep into that in my 2 months yet, but we're starting to identify those things and put them down. And then, you know, kind of cost containment measures, the most of what runs here is pretty efficient. I mean, kind of go through that. I haven't seen a lot left. One thing I've noticed is the firefighters here are very good about taking care of what they have and making sure that they do, like, I mean, you have an entire maintenance staff that maintains the building, maintains the trucks, maintains everything. I mean, like, if a light breaks, they fix the light. If something on the truck breaks, they fix the truck. I mean, they're very good at maintaining everything they possibly can. Nothing leaves that fire station unless it's out of their scope of ability. So they do a very good job of, like, internal maintenance on the building and the equipment. So that's been very good to see. All right, let's see. All right, SWOT analysis. So if you don't know, this is something we use in fire a lot. SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's kind of how we break down our department. How do you look at your community? How do you look at your department? Things you can do. So these are just kind of go through a list of things. So these are the strengths that so far I've identified that really stand out here. So we have a strong community automatic aid network. So we get a lot of support from all our surrounding communities. We also give a lot of support. That's a integral part of how we operate. Like, there's no way we could operate most of the things we do if we didn't have the support. And it's not mutual aid. Mutual aid is you have to call and ask for their help. The entire system of Hamilton County is set up for automatic aid. The run sheets are already laid out. If there's a fire here right now, they will know who the trucks are that are going to come. If those trucks are busy, it goes like 90 deep into the next truck, the next truck, the next truck. And they've even run it into the surrounding counties who would come if everybody's tied up. So anytime there's a big incident here, it automatically happens. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to ask for it. It just is already in the CAD, so it's a great program, and it operates very smooth here. Keeping us at an ISO classification of 4 is going to be very good for the community as far as, cost of insurance and things of that nature. I feel like, I've experienced it, so I say this from experience, that I feel like there's a very supportive town leadership here. You guys are very easy to talk to. You guys are easy to give information to. It's very easy to sit down and talk to you guys about anything. So I really appreciate that. I think that's a big strength for this area. Potential growth, like I said, I don't know what that's going to look like, but potential growth has a big impact on what we do here, but I also see it as a positive for this community and for the fire department. My experience from being here for a few months, we have a very good set of professional firefighters. They know their job, they train hard, they do their job very well, and they are very curious and very eager to learn. So, for example, I've come from a big technical rescue background. That's a lot of what I did in my previous job, and that's something that they haven't had the chance to do here. And we've already started planning that out. They're very excited about it. So any new skill or any new opportunity, they're ready to go. They're very excited to do it. So I've really enjoyed that about this group. And then the medics here are top notch. We have probably the most open skills of whatever our medical director, if an EMT can, or if a paramedic can do it, he lets us do it, and he trains them. So it's not like he just says, hey, if you guys can figure it out, do it. He trains them. We do a lot of training on things, anything from ultrasounds to pushing the highest level of medication, because a lot of times they're out this way to the north. They might be out there for a long time really working on a patient, and it might be a while till they get support or anything they need, and they have to be able to treat in the field. It's a very different world here, because the closest hospital may be Riverview, or maybe they may have to go to down to Westfield or even to Indianapolis. So they travel all over the place. So they have to be able to do any medicine, any medical thing that they can do to keep the patient stable and save their life, they're able to do, and they're able to do it in a very effective manner. So the medics in this department are definitely one of the strengths. Any questions on that? All right, weaknesses. So anytime you have strengths, then you assess your weaknesses. First thing, administrative capacity. One thing I've noticed is our administrative people on the line, so the line chiefs, the battalion chiefs, the 3 of them, they are tied up with a lot of administrative work just due to the nature of us only having a fire chief in the office. So they get tied up in a lot of that, which actually takes away from their fire side. Like the things they need to be doing for fire, they struggle to do because they spend so much time actually doing administrative work. So that's one of the things I've identified, and we're just kind of talking about how can we ease some of that going forward. Facility limitations and outgrowing the current station. As we grow, we're finding that we're really cramped in there, and that's not a thing that's going to change anytime soon, but we're just know that if we get any bigger than we are maxed out in that station. That station wasn't built to live in. That station was built as a volunteer fire station. It wasn't made for a lot of people to be in, and they're definitely on top of each other all the time, which, they manage. It's fine. They do all right. But just for future growth, that's one of the things to be aware of. Apparatus life cycle challenges. So we have the engine, which is a 2006 engine. So it's 20 years old now. And then we just bought the ladder, but the ladder is also a 2010. They both work very well. They're very mechanically sound trucks, but you also have to know that anytime you have a fire truck of that age, at any time it could have a catastrophic breakdown. This last couple weeks, I think Jackson Township's been dealing with this. They have 2 engines. Both of them are down. They're actually in a Noblesville fire truck operating because both their trucks aren't operational, broken the last couple weeks. So
they have a brand new truck.
it broke. Yeah, fire trucks are.
It's not built like the old stuff.
Fire
so
trucks
they're
are
good to
fickle.
go.
I tell you what, I will tell you this. Anything that's mechanical, the old mechanical trucks, we had a 1991 truck that had been used for years. It had just been in storage. went and put a battery charger on, fired it up, worked like a champ. Like it had never stopped working. And it just had nothing mechanical. It was all mechanical. There was nothing electronic on that truck. Everything now is very, very, very electronic. So that stuff all, you know, has gremlins and problems. So it's just part of what you deal with. But just be aware that, you know, even though we did get a new ladder truck, it's still a 15-year-old ladder truck, and it has the potential to have a problem. Hopefully it doesn't. Like I said, it operates very well. It's a good truck. So we'll try to do our best to keep it in that manner. Full-time versus part-time. So we have a lot of, you know, it's a lot of positive and it's a lot of negative you can deal with. But the negative, the weakness of the part-time for this full-time is it's inconsistent. We don't really control them. They're working a secondary job for us. We're not their primary employer. So we have a lot of issues with, you know, somebody might put themselves on the schedule and then they get called for their department and have to work. So the day before they just pull themselves off the schedule. We get a lot of that. So we're scrambling to try to fill that spot at the last minute, and that's just one of the weaknesses we run into with part-time staff. They do an incredible job for us. They are making up a lot of shifts. They're eating up a lot of hours for us, which has been really good. But if you look down the next one, so in January we were 455 hours of unfilled time. That's how many hours we didn't fill in the month of January. 217 in February. Part of the difference is we are fully staffed. We hired the extra person to replace Steve, got him up and running in the middle of February. So that cut down quite a bit of that overtime. But this is also kind of a false sense of security because we're in the time of year where nobody's taking vacation. Nobody vacations that much in January, February. So vacation season will start here in March, into March. So March through the end of the year is kind of where we start getting into that. So, you know, we have that liability of every day. If one person is off, we're filling 3 positions, 72 hours a day. So that's the challenge for us, is to be able to do that. And as the summer also comes along, a lot of our part-timers will start working more overtime at their departments they work at, so they aren't as available much. So we kind of have, that's the liability we run into with the part-timers. But you know, they've definitely filled a lot of spots for us in the last couple months. All right, opportunities. So we've been doing a lot of crunching of numbers, and this is one thing that I want to present to you later in the year, but the idea is it cheaper to hire 3 firefighters and have 15 for 18 positions, like one more person today versus the cost of overtime, part-time? We probably are at about I would say we're at a 60-40 split currently of overtime versus part-time. So we're definitely using more overtime than we are part-time, and that's just the nature of the availability of them. We're working on that, something I'm not ready to present yet, but I just want you to be aware that's something I'm trying to put together to present to you and see if we can show that it's actually cheaper to have 3 more full-time people. And if we are in the ballpark of being in that same cost, it's much more stable for our fire department to schedule. If we're scheduling 1 a day versus 3 a day, or 2 a day, or 2 a day versus 3 a day, that makes a huge difference for us in scheduling. The next thing, our inspection program expansion. So one thing we're doing is a lot of our technology we use, we can, as we do an inspection on a property, we can actually upload that into our response software. So when we have a run, you know, like my watch will go off if we have a run, and we have a couple programs that tell us, gives us all the details what happens, but we can actually put floor plans in, we can put hazards in, we can put anything in for that building as we go. So as we start going through the inspection process, we're doing that, but we're also going to try to work a lot to really get we don't do inspections on anything residential. So residential is, we don't inspect, it's only commercial in Indiana we inspect. But we can voluntarily get information from homeowners to put in there. So like, for example, we had a gentleman call today, and he called and I talked to him, and his question was he has a fall device that if he falls, he can push a button or it detects he falls. And he just wanted to make sure it works. So we were having a conversation about that, and he said, well, I know that if you guys come to my house, you know how to get the key to get into my house. Well, in our programming, we can hit his address when we get dispatched there, and it'll say special notes. We pull it up, it'll say there's a key in the back in the fake rock or something, you know, and it'll tell us exactly where to get the key. So a lot of times we have elderly people that fall, they can't get to the door, and we don't want to break their door down, so we have methods in here to put the information in that we can do that. So we're going to really focus on trying to expand that and get a lot more of that data put in for the community, to where especially high-risk people, we can get into their homes and be able to respond to them without causing damage to their houses if they're down. This is probably the best thing that has happened in the last couple months. So I have a good relationship with all the chiefs in the county. I knew most of them before I got here just from being the chief in Kokomo for a while. So I've made good relationships with them, but they've been very helpful to us. Like, I can't say enough for the partnerships that they've offered and helped form already. But one thing we're doing is training is very hard for us just from the number of people we have. You know, if I have our engine needs to go train, well, we can't. There's no place to train here. We're either going to Noblesville or the new training facility. So the question was, how do we actually send our people to train without it costing us overtime? Because I would either have to bring them in on their days off and do it on a day they're not working, or we have to have a system to where when we train, somebody helps us. So we've been working with Noblesville very heavily on this process, and I think we've got it set up to where they're going to do some partnerships with us where 74s is right down the street here, things like that. Like, so if we need to go train with them, with Noblesville, they can come and backfill and spend that time learning our area because they respond here all the time anyways. This is a first response area to them. So we're working on partnerships, and we're already there. Our first live burn training with Noblesville is going to be the March 18th, 19th, and 20th, and they have Station 77, which is out by Ruoff, way out there. They have a burn facility out there, so we're going to start working with their crews that we work with here on live burn training. So we're going to do some rotation of crews and actually get our guys out there and do training with Noblesville. And then we are pretty much going completely to follow Noblesville's training regimen, so we can stay. It takes one of the responsibilities off of our people because we don't have to come up with that every year. They have it. We can just follow along with them and train with them as it comes up. It also gives us an opportunity to do multi-agency training where we can go meet with them. You know, we can get with the closest stations and we can find a place to show up and train together. So that's a really good partnership that we formed with them, and they're very happy to do it. Like I said, I can't say enough about the other cities in Hamilton County. They've been great to work with there. Anything we need, what do you need? Let me know. We'll do everything we can to help you guys out. So that's been a very good thing to see. And then we also will have next, I think we're talking, they're saying December, but it might be a little bit later, but the Hamilton County Training Center is going to be done for police and fire, which is going to be a state-of-the-art training facility. It'll be one of the best in the country. Half of it's police, half of it's fire, and we'll have full access to that. And they're really we're working as a Hamilton County group to we have a training site called Vector Solutions. We're working on putting that together where we all have access to the same training materials, the same programs, same everything. So if, for example, there was a training event going to happen at the training facility when it's done, they could send out all of the pre-incident information, like here's what we're doing, here's what you're going to need, here's the safety briefing, here's all the things, and we can get all that done before we start. So the partnerships we're forming are really good, and it's really going to help this community a lot. And the last one for opportunities is the SAFER grant's always out there. Like I said before, I would be hesitant to approach a SAFER grant until it's something you really, really need, because if you get it for 2 or 3 people, you know, it is money, but it's not that much. But if Cicero grows to where we need a second station, that's when it needs to be addressed, because that's when you start saying, hey, we need to fund 12 positions, not 3 positions. You know, and that's a much more cost-effective way to do it going forward. Oh, come on. All right, threats. So the last part of this is always threats. That's the things that we see that we have to focus on that could happen, and we just have to be aware of and be ready for it. So, you know, of course, inflationary cost of apparatus, it's going up all the time, and it's just a nonstop thing. So if anything breaks or any issues like that would happen, we would have to address that, and it's always more and more every year. Recruitment and retention challenges. So that's probably one of the biggest things that we are going to deal with going forward. And I'll talk about it later a little more in depth, but you know, it's just how do you find high quality people to fill your positions, and how do you keep them is what we really face. And it's not just us, it's the entire fire service. Everybody's having the same issues and challenges, so go through that. ISO retrogression risk, we don't want to go back in that again, so we're making sure that all the things that could sneak up on us, we're going to take care of and try to be ahead of the curve, so the next time there's not even a question. We know where we are, we don't have to deal with this again. Like I said before, age of apparatus is a threat, just based on what we have. That we have a 15-year-old and a 20-year-old vehicles. Coverage of the west side is a little bit of a threat just from response time, water usage, things of that nature. So we do know that. One of the biggest concerns I have as threats is for the fire department. It's not really our area, but Jackson Township past the town limits, when you get into those giant houses that are all quarter mile off the road, a windy driveway up a hill, there's no water out there, there's nothing. I mean, it's a very, very challenging response. And just it may not be our area, but they're most likely we're there first. So our crews are gonna be the first people handling those situations on some of these houses. So that's one of the things that I definitely have a concern about, and I think that's where a lot of our training with Noblesville and the other entities will really help us a lot, because they're gonna be coming in with us, and as long as we all work really well together, I think we can mitigate a lot of that risk out there. And retention of medics. So retention of medics, I'll talk about a little bit later, but that's one of our biggest issues. Medics are hard to find. When you lose one, if you lose one, it's very hard to replace, and that's our biggest issue right now, that we have currently 8 paramedics. One will retire 2028, beginning of 28, so we'll be down to 7. So one of the biggest pushes I have is to find paramedics. How do we find them? Where do they come from? How are we going to go forward with that? 'Cause like I said, they're very, very hard to find. Our strategic priorities for this year are basically kind of getting staffing, stabilization, retention. The stabilization I was talking about earlier, we need to be able to fill all of our spots all the time, 24/7. That's the goal. So we have a lot of holes, and you'll see, I think, might be one of the next pages in there, but that's part of the biggest thing we need to work on. Officer development's a big one. We're really trying to work on creating the next generation of officers who's going to take the spots coming forward. Like I said, the expanded risk-based inspections are a lot what we're doing, where we're really going to identify if there's any risks in the town and commercial businesses, or even, you can even see a residential that could be a risk based on what's in the backyard. Is there stuff piled up? Can we see that the house could be a hoarder house? Things like that. So we're really going to focus on identifying risks in town. And that comes into the data-driven performance metrics. We really are going to start looking into what areas of town, and Chief Overholzer has done this a lot. This isn't anything new. It's just a matter of staying on top of it and seeing where do we make the most runs in which areas, what type of runs are they, are there any things that are causing us problems that we need to be aware of based on distance, number of people, things of that nature, kind of what I talked about out past the town limits. We've been doing a lot of collaboration with EMA and the county government as far as like availability. This county is so good at providing resources and being there to help. Like this, it's just amazing to me what they offer and what they do. So, like our IT runs through them, our computers, this computer, our radios. If we need anything, it's a phone call to them and it's fixed like that. They're just a very, very good organization and resource for our fire department. And then the last of our strategic priorities is, so in the fire service, we have a chief who is in the car, who's the first one there. He's taken off and he's going to kind of figure out what's happening. He's going to be radioing back to the incoming things. But the one thing we don't have is we don't have a officer-based hierarchy. So any given day, up to this point, we're working on this right now, we didn't have you're in charge of the truck today, or you are driving the truck, or you are on the back of the truck. It was just a random, every day, we're gonna see who wants to do what each day. Each engine on a fire or ladder, the company should have a company officer, and that person is in charge of the people on there, because like Christian and Darren, for example, when they show up at a fire, their job is to be outside and their command, basically. Their job is to look at the fire, make sure the house is safe, and make sure the people working are safe, and that's most of their job. To direct crews, to direct people coming in, so that's mostly what they do. Inside the building, if they go in to fight a fire, there should be a person who is the officer, who's making decisions, and we don't have that. So that's one of the things I want to look at, is creating 3 captains positions so we have an officer on shift. And then what happens is if that battalion chief is off, the succession is that officer is going to move up, and that person is going to be training for the next job. We don't currently have any method of like succession planning of when chiefs leave or things like that. So this helps that, because if you don't have that, it falls into your promotions are typically by time on the job as opposed to experience or ability. We want to create that almost like competition, but, you know, there should be some competition for that next job. Who's really stepping up and doing that kind of thing? And that's one of the things that we kind of lack here, that we want to kind of look into creating going forward.
So I'm assuming those are different pay scales as well?
We have a lieutenant, but it would, when I say captain, you could call it a lieutenant, you could call it whatever. So we have one lieutenant right now, and the only reason we have that position is because they created that for the person who runs all the EMS. It was just like they really don't operate as an officer, they operate as a person who just has an extra job, and that was just a way to find a way to pay them to do that extra job. But they don't actually operate as an officer. But yes, there would be 3 positions that would be at that pay scale of lieutenant. Let's see. Okay, partnership with the town council. So, you know, I'm trying to learn kind of the budget. I'm kind of going through the details of it, kind of learning how to put together. Lance left me with a very good, a lot of information. So I have a lot of information I can go through and see why things were done the way they were, breaking it down into the smallest aspects of each part. So it's been really good to be able to go through, but I'm still in that learning process. So I'm kind of working on that. But it's one of the things with the town council I want to work on is kind of long-term capital planning. What are the needs of the Cicero Fire Department and the town of Cicero for fire protection? Going to that. Policy alignment's one of the things I think is kind of strange to me because we don't have any language specifically for the fire department as far as policies. It's everything is through the employee handbook. Well, a lot of things in the employee handbook may not address fire department specific issues. So there's a lot of issues that we're kind of going through to figure out. Are they addressed in the handbook? If not, we need to actually be able to write those down and say this is a fire department policy, because police and fire are always held to a completely different standard than the rest of the town employees or city employees. That's always an issue. We have dealing with the public, there's an expectation that we, operate a certain way, we talk to people a certain way, things of that nature. And how do we deal with the public and things like that? So that's just one of the things we're kind of like talking about is, are there things that we need to address about the fire department, and specifically in language of how do we deal with the employees on the department. And then the last one, continued leadership collaboration. Like I said, I really even had a good experience with you guys, working with you. You guys have been easy to work with, and I just want to continue that. All right, the next part. So we get into kind of fiscal challenges, what we deal with, and I think you guys all know this. I think this has been talked about for years. So when we talk about competitive pay, medic stipend, and longevity pay, those are the 3 biggest things that I say come up and that we will have challenges with going in the future. There's a chart on there for you to look at, but it just kind of compares. The yellow is who my concern is we lose people to. We're the red. The green are the people we can pull from, and a couple of them fell off. I'm not sure why they got cut off, but there's a couple more departments to the north of us that we could actually lateral from. But the concern is we also are the lateral targets for the yellow above. So you can kind of see, so the way that breaks out, that's base salary, longevity, and then that's how pension base is figured. You add those 2 together, and that's how the state calculates your pension. It's your 20-year pay plus your 20-year longevity pay. And you can just kind of see the differences. So that's just for you guys to kind of go through and look at and have an understanding of kind of what we're dealing with and competing with in the competitive market. The next one, competitive pay. So we're competing with all of Central Indiana for limited trained firefighters and medics. So it's very hard, and we currently can't afford to train new firefighters because of the cost of putting somebody through an academy. We don't have the resources to do that, so we're relying on laterals currently. One thing we are dealing with right now, we talked about this in a previous meeting, our 8 paramedics do not have any kind of stipend for being a paramedic. If you look around us, I think we're the only department within an hour of us that have paramedics that don't have a stipend. So that's something that probably needs to be discussed. One of the suggestions I have is at the end of the year, we look at what happens with the increased ambulance billing and see if that's a possibility to use some of that money to create a paramedic stipend going forward. But internally, that's a big issue we're dealing with of, it's $5,000 to $12,000 paramedic stipend, high end to medium. I mean, we're pretty much at the 5,000 is about the bottom of the thing. So it's something to be aware of and to know it exists, and it's something we really need to talk about because it's crucial for retention. We don't want to lose our paramedics. We don't want our paramedics to give up their license. So like I said, if I don't get anything extra for it, why do I need it? That's something we need to make sure doesn't happen. We need to make sure that we keep our paramedics. They're very crucial to our operation, and they're very hard to find and replace if we would lose one. And things I've seen, so these are things that we're gonna be talking about probably for a while, but that's like future discussions I think that probably are gonna be had. Whether, you know, the Cicero Fire Department versus a district versus a territory. That's an ongoing discussion I think is gonna be happening for a while. I feel like there are very strong bones to this area. You guys have a very good department right now. It does its job very well. Its only limitations are, you know, staffing and equipment, things of that nature, but it's all high dollar things. It's all money. So everything comes down to money when it comes to fire departments, and that's not unique to Cicero. That's every fire department everywhere, every city, every township deals with that at some point in time. Pace of growth is something that we really have to be on top of to make sure we keep up with response to the pace of growth that are gonna happen in this area. Water and hydrants are gonna make a huge difference for us in this town. That provides us so much more ability to do our job when water pressure is good in the hydrants, and we can get more access to water in more areas and as we grow here. Technical rescue capabilities, like I said before, we're really gonna push that. We're gonna really get to the point where, especially water, like swift water and static water, you know, I want our people to be comfortable in the water. If we have to go out and do a rescue in the water, we want to make sure they're competent and capable of doing those rescues. And then the last thing on there is administrative positions. That's something that's been talked about for a while. I know it's been in the budget several years, but that's something that at some point probably really we need to have a long discussion about what would that look like to have a second administrative position on the fire department, a second day job. And what that does is that helps us with the earlier problem of all of our battalion chiefs are so tied up in administrative work, they don't have the time to do the fire stuff that they're supposed to be doing. So a lot of these are things that I see coming down the road, or things that we're currently dealing with them, but they're gonna be long-term discussions, long-term issues. You know, we're not gonna solve any of these problems in a couple meetings. This is stuff we have to talk about for a long period of time and get to that. And then our commitment to Cicero, you know, we provide professionalism. We want to be prepared, we want to be accountable, and we want to be forward-thinking in our leadership. And our leadership doesn't include me, just include me. Leadership is all the way to the bottom. The last person we hired, they are involved in leadership. We want their opinion, we want to know what they think, we want to know what they need, what they see. You know, their fire departments get very stagnant if they only care about what the people at the top think. And if you don't take into consideration the people at the bottom, when I say bottom, I don't mean that derogatory, it's just the hierarchy of the department. They have a different viewpoint than we have. You know, I've been in the fire service 26 years. I see things differently than a guy who's been there for 1 or 2 years. They have a different perspective. So really listening and considering them leaders of moving the department forward. Everybody has a position of leadership on the fire department, and they all can use it in their current position wherever they are. So really pushing that and getting them to think and be confident to speak up is something we're really pushing and want to see happen. And that's all I have on here for that part. One thing I did want to I would talk about, so I know we had talked about it earlier, but I've been putting it together. So part of the idea of how we would staff the department, I'm going to put a bunch of models together, but one of the issues we have, I think, Rhonda, I think Suzanne was asking about this, talking to Lisa about this. We need to get you all the information for the money that wasn't in Gateway. How do we go about doing that? I think it's more of a question than so. No. So we didn't have because you put the budget in early. We don't have the whole budget in the Gateway. How do we need to?
It's just, I'll transfer it. When they told me to add 500,000, I just added it to wages. It can be.
Okay, perfect. Yep,
It's in there.
that answers it. Okay, yeah, that's easy enough. Perfect. Any questions you guys have for me?
Chris, of your challenges?
Yep.
Looking forward, addressing weaknesses, would you have an order of the top 3 most important?
Of the weaknesses? On the weakness part?
Yes.
I would say.
I know you've got a sheet here that talks about.
No, I would say absolutely. Staffing is number 1. So the sheet, so that's one thing I want to tell you guys. So the sheet that's in there that shows all the listing of hours, we're very hodgepodge in hours. So for example, we have a lot of people we all shift change at 7 o'clock. So we have a person who works for us a lot. We have several people who work for us a lot who get off at 7 o'clock from their job also. So we have a firefighter specifically that works for Indianapolis Fire Department. And when that firefighter gets off work, they will come here and like work the second 12, but they have to leave at 5 in the morning to go to Indianapolis to work their actual job. So they'll take off from here at 5, so we have a 2-hour gap every morning when that person works. We have a lot of the opposite, where a person who's coming in to fill a shift for us gets off at 7 o'clock, and they may not make it to us until 9 o'clock. So we just have those weird holes all over the time. And then a lot of times, you know, we'll have a day where somebody's like, hey, I can come in and work from midnight to 7, but I can't get there till then, or I can work from 10 to 7. So we're struggling with filling that full 12 hours or 24 hours, and we could make a policy and say, hey, you know, you have to work the whole 12 or the whole 24, but then we wouldn't have anybody. So the nature of the part-time people gives us that. So one thing we're working on is trying to really identify when that happens and see if our people who are leaving in the morning can stay over and bridge that gap for an hour or two, or come in a little bit early and bridge that gap. So that's one of the conversation we're having right now of how do we do that and how do we fix some of those problems. But like I said, you know, you can see if you look down that list of hours, they're all over the place. I mean, you'll have, one day we had 5 short, one day we have 4, some days we have 1 short, some days it's 24 short, some days it's 24 and then another 8, you know, it's all over the place. So that just is the nature of part-time staffing, of you just have to take what you can get, because they're doing a second job for you to help fill your spots. So that's the thing. I mean, like, to me, the biggest issue I deal with is scheduling, and the biggest fix for that is if we can show that it's cheaper to hire 3 people versus paying all this overtime and part-time, that gives us consistency, and if we can do it for the same amount of money, I think it's a net win for everybody.
How soon do you think you'll have that information?
I just started on it about 2 weeks ago, and I'm doing a bunch of comparisons. I'm getting all the information compiled, like, what's our average sick leave? So we don't use a lot of sick leave. Our department, I would say, is pretty good at sick leave. If somebody gets hurt, that's a whole nother story. But just calling in sick, I don't feel like we use a lot of it. So we're kind of compiling that information. It comes down to military. So we have our hours, then we have 48 a day we're not filling, and then we have add vacation time in there, add sick time in there, add military time in there. If we have to send anybody away for a day to train on a day they would work, if there's a class we need them to go to, little things like that go in. But the where I'm at right now is what I'm showing is, and these are very high-end numbers I'm putting in. I'm putting in like the worst-case scenarios in these numbers. I think with the budget we have currently in there, if we hired 3 people, and this isn't going to be for part of the year, so it's going to be a little skewed because it would be like maybe a 6 months we would have this. If we would do this for a whole year, I see it saves us about $113,000 minus what I haven't put in there is sick time. And sick time, I'm calculating it, I think it's around, sick time, military time out to combined, I think is about $40,000 maybe. So I think as a group, as a whole, I think we actually would save money by doing that. But the kicker to it is we're so small that if we lose 1 person, it's devastating to us. If we lose 2 people, like with injuries, like if we had a fire where a couple guys got hurt, we had 2 of our firefighters hurt, and they had an injury where they had to be off 3 or 4 months, that's devastating to our staffing, you know, with the way we are. Adding more people helps that, and then it gives us an opportunity to fill. So, you know, I'm at the point right now where there's a couple days where I'm going to come in and work 24-hour shifts just because we're so short that day. You know, like we have days where we're starting the day with 3 and nobody else is available. All our part-timers are tied up, they're working, or they have other commitments, and our other people, actual people aren't able to work that day. So we have, you know, it's always juggling that around. So that by far is our biggest issue that we deal with. Where did it go? And the thing I would say is probably second is administrative capacity, our ability to do administrative work, because we pull so much time from our fire chiefs line chiefs who should be focusing on fire to do administrative jobs. That's probably number 2. And then apparatus is 3, because I'm always afraid apparatus is going to break, you know. And if it does, you know, we have to figure that out. It's going to be a scramble to figure it out, but that's just part of running a fire department. But I would say of that list, I would say those are the 3. And really, that's the 3 that are on there.
So 1 and 2 are kind of competing against each other.
I would say one is way ahead. 2 is a second. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you take people and put them just on administrative. then
Oh
you
yeah,
need
yeah. If you
additional
pull
people,
and then you're
you need
yeah.
additional people.
Right. It's another firefighter. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's adding a whole other position. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is. Yeah. It is. It all competes with itself. Absolutely.
That we're already
Yeah.
pretty significantly over.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, those are the issues. And like I said, the unfilled hours, you can see they got a little bit better, but I also feel like we're in the the non-vacation season, so nobody's gone just yet. So once vacation starts hitting and we start actually having people off a lot more, then we start fighting that unfilled hours a lot more.
So if you had 3 people, what would you do? You'd put 1 per each shift?
Yeah. We would, so we have 6 positions a day, that would fill 5 with full-time people, and then we would have 1, every day we would have 1 to fill with either overtime or PRN, and then vacation, then the other one is filling vacation. So we'd have to fill vacation, sick time, anything like that that comes up would be the rest of what we would have to fill. I think I went through all the numbers that you gave me, Rhonda, and it looks to me like it's about the total cost package for a new firefighter, if they came in as a lateral with 5 years of experience on pay and all that stuff, puts them at about $124,000 roughly, adding the FICA and all the other things into it. What we have to pay on clothing them, things of that nature. So it's about that much. So you're looking at $372,000 roughly is what the cost of 3 firefighters is. Because there's health insurance, there is perf, things like that go into it. Those two alone are $23,000 or $43,000 probably, right? 19,000 for perf and then like 24 for insurance. 21. Oh, that's right. Perf went up this year. That's right.
Depending on which,
Insurance.
can
Yeah.
get up to
Right.
$35,000 a year, the family package.
Right.
Plus the 65.
Yeah. Well, you guys you just have like an average budgeting number, I think is what I saw in there.
No,
You do it individually for each, okay. I think in the budgeting that I have, it's broken down to an average number.
mine's not average,
Yeah.
mine's actually.
Okay.
But I do, I want for somebody as a child and their own parents to move to the town's insurance. That's why the insurance line is packed so heavy.
Yeah. So,
What are we doing with the fire truck in the back? I'm
trying to
assuming
get,
it was
I am
winterized?
trying to get somebody to buy it.
I'm assuming it was winterized?
Yeah, no, it works fine. You can go out there and start it up. It works great.
Okay.
Yeah. The biggest thing with that truck is getting the water out of it. That's winterizing a fire truck, is getting every drop of water, all the valves open, make sure there's no water left inside of it. So I've been looking at different sites that offer options. We did this with a couple trucks that I had before when I was chief before. And, I assume you guys operate the same way. Anything that goes up for sale has to be put up for auction or several bids put in it, or is there a bid process? So a lot of these companies that buy fire trucks, they'll offer you something, but you can negotiate with them term, and then they just turn in that as the bid. So they're pretty good about, they don't backdoor you, they don't come in and say, hey, well, we told you to give you 80, but nobody else has bid, so we're gonna offer 4, you know. I've had good luck with companies do that. So we're reaching out. The problem is the age, because that's an older truck. And there are age limits to what they usually will buy. You just have to find somebody who's looking for a truck like that. So,
I mean, you're concerned about maintenance, mechanical issues with old trucks, so maybe
Yep.
3 old trucks is better than
well, I mean,
a new truck.
that truck is so old that it's not even like functionally usable for what we do. I mean, we could use it maybe to pump water, but the rest of it is just, I wouldn't put anybody up in that ladder with the age of that truck. Hasn't been used for a while, and it's just, they all will tell you nobody would really like to get up in that truck the way it was. That truck is very sketchy, I would say, for what it is.
Okay. So you talked about a CAD system as well. I thought we paid extra money to keep the old CAD system, but it sounds like we switched to the new.
That's all through the county. That all comes from them.
Didn't we pay?
Yes. You were, I think it was $6,000 that you paid in order to keep part of the Sun system that was already in existence.
Oh, no, we get reimbursed for that.
Yes, it was.
That $6,000, the county pays us back for it. That's just, we have to pay it up front, and then they reimburse us. It was for our first due, which is our inspection software.
Yeah, I thought
Did that just come up in the last, like just recently, right, in the last couple pages?
That was last year where we
Yeah.
paid extra for keeping the old, because the county was going to the new system or something.
Oh, yeah, so they went through that whole process, so there's a kind of a competing interest on who likes what in the county for the different municipalities, so they've come up with an agreement that the part that we actually use at First Due, which is the software, they're gonna cover that portion of what we use. They're not covering the whole product, which is dispatch and reporting and all that. They're just covering the inspection part, which we do. So we paid that up front, and then they're gonna reimburse us for that amount.